trouble as a renter before, and it's for people that are trying to bring themselves back from having bad credit or being evicted and that kind of stuff. And it's sponsored by the housing authority in town for people that are on housing assistance. So I organized the landlords to do a panel, and we go to this last session after they've been through all the education about how to be a good tenant, and we come in and talk to them about evictions and issues with notices and that sort of thing, and deposit refunds. And so we get these stories all the time, and we talk to them a lot about that. But I tell them, and it's true, if you have a landlord that doesn't raise the rent, then the landlords paint themselves into a corner where eventually they either have to raise the rent a lot and never spend any money on the place, which is what maybe your experience. But a good landlord, a good property management company is going to raise the rent periodically, small amounts, small increments, so that we can stay ahead of inflation and always be able to put on the new roof, to replace the furnace, to paint the place, replace the carpet. The record we have for the longest tenant in our place is over 40 years. And I didn't rent to her in there in the beginning because we haven't owned the building that long, but she lived there when we bought the building. And if you ask her, you know, the previous owner took good care of her, and she's happy, she didn't want to move, she happens to be a teacher, and she's now retired. And she's lived in the same place from the day she got her first teaching job in Lincoln. And she's lived there ever since. So we try to, she's an example to us of why it's important for us to take care of our tenants. So, and the main way we do that is by making sure that the neighboring tenant is a good person as well. It's not going to be trouble for them. So we pride ourselves on making sure as much as possible that we avoid bad people in our homes. So what other questions do you have in general? Yes?
Talking about maybe other cities, if you're looking to rent a place, what kind of things should you look for to know they're going to be good landlords?
Well, you can check with the Better Business Bureau in that vicinity. If you're there physically, you can knock on the doors of a place that you're considering and ask the people living there what it's like living there, what's the management. And that's really about the only thing you can do, that or maybe do a public check on if there's a local trade association sometimes you can find out if there have been complaints through them. So that's the best way. And just look at the place. You can tell if it's well cared for or not. If it's run down and not well cared for, that's going to reflect on how they manage the place in general. Yes, sir.
I'm in sales also, and I also kind of noticed there's people have a general kind of negative perception of sales because kind of like you're saying, there's like a lot of corruption. Do you think that's kind of just like a sales-generated area that there's like a lot of corruption because there's a lot of potential for it?
Yeah.
And then how did you decide to, I guess, start with the decisions that you did? Because it sounds like right away you just decided you were going to go down that path. But what got you to that?
Yeah, well, I was a scout. I mean, I had good ethics, and my parents had raised me to be honest and have integrity, and so I have to thank them. And it just never occurred to me to ever go down that path and take advantage of people. The most successful salespeople in the world are successful not because they're so ambitious and so greedy about making a lot of money. They care about that and they want to be successful, but they also have an equal and a balanced regard and concern for satisfying the needs of their customer. So the most successful salespeople can find out, connect with people, get a relationship with them, make a connection, find out what they really need, and serve that need. If they can do that, they're going to be successful and do well for themselves. And that's true in any sales arena that there is. I mean, that's just a universal truth. So in any business, if you can satisfy the need of a customer so well and make money at the same time, you're going to be successful. So it's really that simple. But I've had opportunities to see in my career a lot of dishonesty and a lot of corruption, and I just steer away from it. I either quit or be fired from those situations or walk away. I mean, it's just not, to me, it's never worth doing that. We were talking about the fella who spent 9 years in prison here recently. He was the kind of a whistleblower on the
ethics speaker that you guys listened to
scandal years ago. And I can't imagine having got to that point where I would have been thrown in jail for 9 years. I'm not that greedy that I wanted to make that much money dishonestly. I like to make a lot of money, but not dishonestly. It's just not worth it. We talked about management a little bit.
Did you talk about the number of employees?
We have, our staff now is about 12, besides myself, some full-time, some part-time. And a lot of the situations that I've been in and the companies I've been involved with were already pre-existing, the structure was there, the employees and the management and the middle management, and everybody had their routine. And that's a challenge, it's a different challenge than starting something from scratch. If you're an entrepreneur and you're starting from scratch, you know, you can do it any way you want, and you're in a certain sense inventing the wheel, and you can learn from this class and reading and other classes that you're going to take, or seminars that you want to go to, or people you want to listen to. You can try to learn from them and not have to make their mistakes or reinvent the wheel as much as possible. But there's a certain amount of mistake making and learning hands-on that you're going to have to do. I mean, nobody is that smart that they can learn how to be a successful entrepreneur out of the box without having to learn something in the real world and get out there and make some mistakes. And management is the biggest challenge. You know, it's the hardest thing to learn to do, especially if you're a self-starter and you want to do it all yourself. That's the biggest challenge, is moving from the point of doing everything the way you want to do it and working your butt off to do it all on your own, and trying to figure out how to transfer that to an employee and get somebody that'll do that for you and do it as well, because no one ever can. I mean, you have to learn to kind of be satisfied with maybe 90% instead of your own 100% effort, because if somebody's an employee, they're just not going to be able to do the 100% that you would do if it was yourself, if you could clone yourself, for example. But you can get people to do a lot of good work for you if you treat them well and you give them good direction. As an entrepreneur, if you can find somebody that has the ability and they're capable, and you treat them well and you give them good guidance and coach them into doing a good job, that's the perfect situation. Trying to be a boss as opposed to a coach is not going to work in the long run, at least probably in the modern day. I think back in the old days when they were running the fabric mills down south, and that's where unions came from, is because workers were mistreated. But today the unions are on the wane because people in successful businesses have learned to treat their people well enough that they don't feel the need to be unionized. Besides, you don't want to have a union company, because then your employees would have to tell their kids bedtime stories starting off once upon a time and a half, and it doesn't work.
I hadn't heard that one.
So, anyway, any other questions? Yes?
Do you have an email address that we can contact you at? If you have questions, either,
Sure.
I
Sure.
think that
It's
was,
simply I'm sorry, back up, this is my website. It's greatplace at neb.rr.com. Yep. And it's on the website. You can find it there too. So.
I'm going to say, I'm trying to find it.
I am looking for an intern, either part-time during school and then full-time during the summer, or some combination of that. So looking for somebody to help me with marketing and sales, showing apartments and renting places, working on my website updates, Craigslist updates, and rent pay. We Craigslist our website and rent paying, so we have 3 different online things that we do. We have to keep that information fresh and updated. And last year I told my wife I've got to get some help, because starting now until August 15th, all I do is just run showing apartments continuously. It's just this is the time of the year when we get so busy that I can't get anything else done. So I need some help with that. If anybody is interested, or if you know somebody that's interested in exercising your sales skills, that would be something that we're looking for. Yes?
Do you guys handle all your maintenance, all of your stuff yourself with your own people, lawn mowing, painting, or do you guys hire that out?
Well, we've learned, we have our own people do it as much as we can. The only stuff that we hire out are those things that require city permits for, like a plumber that has to have a license to do things. But everything that we can do in-house, we do it in-house. It just saves a lot of money. As a property investor, if you have to pay the plumber, the electrician, the yard maintenance guy, and everybody separately, it's really tough to make money. The margins are pretty tight. especially if you have a debt service. You know, people that have a lot of money and they buy property cash, you know, they get into that trap of hiring everything out. And if they don't figure the time value of their money, then they don't really, they're not making any money either. But yeah, we tried as much as possible to do it all in-house. Because, you know, a subcontractor or a vendor, you know, they've got to make their margin, and that's fine, you know, everybody's got to make a profit. But if you can do it yourself, you can do it for a fraction of what they're charging you. Cleaning a drain is a good example. When we have to call a drain cleaner guy to come out, it's usually about $150 to $200 to bring in the big snake and snake it out. So I went out and for about $1,200 to $1,300, I bought the same machine that he uses, and we keep it in the shop, and my guys know how to use it. And so I'm paying my guys, you know, their wages is gonna be in there, but they're working for me anyway. One of the things when you get a full-time staff, it's like paying the cable bill. I mean, we're paying them X number of dollars as a full-time employee anyway. So we don't, in our bookkeeping, we don't say, okay, Tom went to this place and spent, 32 minutes and then came back and I charge it out in detail to that property. Now, some property management companies actually do that. They have their people on a very detailed time schedule where they're plugging in what they spend on each one. We're too small and we don't have the money to afford, and the staff to afford to do our bookkeeping in that such detail. So we allocate a lot of those things, so we take all of our labor costs, unless it's a managed property, I have to charge them. But on our own properties, if we have a specific bill to a property that we can enter into the accounting system, fine. Everything else that we don't want to spend the detail on, we lump it into an overhead category, and then we allocate that at the end of the quarter and say 36 units in this building and 10 in this. That ratio is spread on the overhead. So the labor, the lawn mowing, if we go and buy a bunch of supplies that we're going to use everywhere, that all goes into that overhead category. Within that category, we divide it up, so we know what we're spending on specific things, but we don't try to allocate it between properties. And then on QuickBooks, we just do it as a function of a percentage allocation at the end of the quarter and at the end of the year, which works pretty good. It's an estimate, but it's close enough for what we do. Yes?
So it sounds like do you have like a demographic for your renters? Like, it sounds like you have a very specific renter you're looking for, like with the way that your housing is set up.
Well, we do in terms of their qualifications.
Yeah.
I don't care about age. I don't care about anything except, do they have the ability to pay the rent? Do they have a good history of taking good care of the property that they used to live in? And job stability, and that sort of thing. So what turns out that in our price category, the locations that we have, we rent to students, we rent to blue-collar people, we rent to young professionals, people, you know, their first job, and some retired people. We have, you know, several older people that are on fixed incomes. We have people that are on housing assistance. So it's that price range and the rent that is the driver for what the demographic is. Not so much that we're looking for anybody in particular, it's just that that's who comes to our place to rent. And then we filter out those that have bad credit, those that have a criminal background, those that have been proven to be not willing or able to take care of a property. So we end up with, you know, a pretty specific little block of people that are high-quality low-rent people.
You might mention the computer literate, because you said that once you got everything.
Once we switched out of the newspaper ads and strictly to the internet, our quality of tenants raised immediately. It was just like instant. So people that don't own a computer don't rent from us anymore.
I have a question. What do you generally do for background checks, et cetera? Like credit scores, background, like do you go full background checks or full credit scores or?
Yep, we use a company called Tenant Data Services, and they started in Lincoln, they moved to Omaha, now they're regional. They do quite a big chunk of the US actually. And we report to them on our tenants, our experience, and everybody else who belongs does the same. And so anybody that's rented more than once or twice in the area usually is on the database. So we get that information.